Hola, buddies! And welcome to the very first Fortress Showcase of Tropang NXBud. Yes, you heard it right. This is your most awaited Fortress Showcase of mine. Shout out, by the way, to those whom I have promised that I will give shout out when I will be making my Fortress Showcase. Shout out to at General Dancing Fish. Bro, this is your most awaited video. I have finally posted it and I hope you are watching. And also to at Ryu 5665 because later I will be explaining something that concerns about his suggestion last time in the comment section. Okay? So, let's go! Okay, so first things first, why do we need to improve our fort? This is the first question that I asked before I started focusing in defense. Why? It's because and that is how NXB is played. As you can see on the screen, if you search these infos, NXB is a game where you will attack others' fortresses and make your own fortress to defend your own village. And therefore, in order to do those two things, you need to invest on shinobi who will you'll deploy as attackers and who will you'll station as defenders. That is why we have many repetitive missions in NXB. It is because for us to enhance and acquire capable shinobi who can defend and attack fortresses. And indeed, as time passes by, as I learn through my own experiences and through the advice of other people, I indeed improve. And you already know this matter. So before I present to you my whole fortress, let me share with you first 4 important things if you really want to improve in fortress defense. This is something I learned as the time passes by. The first 2 things that I will be sharing is something that I learned from END NXB, one of the famous YouTubers, during the time when I'm still new to his channel because I'm also his subscriber. So at that time, since he is famous in Fortress Showcase and tips, I commented on him that, bro, isn't the reason why you are good in Fortress, it's because you have maxed shinobi in your roster. And then, that is when he replied to me that, yes, it indeed contribute to the win, but all of us have different shinobi, have different builds, etc. But what matters is that here are the 2 things that I'm saying. The first one is we first watch defense replay always to see what are the areas of improvement and then to make use of what we have. Because for example, all of us probably don't have Shishui. For example, all of us probably don't have Final Valley Naruto. We failed to acquire that. So what are you going to use? Are they the only shinobi who can defend fortresses in NXB? No. So, he advised me to experiment, to explore many possibilities. And indeed, after applying that, even though his fortress ideas doesn't work on me, these 2 principles became, on the other hand, one of the foundations of my improvement. So remember that, yes, it's really hurtful to see how other players trashed us. But by watching replays, we also learn from our mistakes and we also see the things that needs to be improved. And that's what I did. I conjure up my own fortress strategy and then I watch the things that still needs to improve and I make use of the shinobi that I have during that time. And as time passes by, indeed, I have improved. And then the third point that I wish that you must be mindful of is that after doing those 2 things, if you notice, a certain shinobi that you have is good in fortress defense, then invest on that shinobi. Improve it. Make it max, make it EX ult level 15, make its LB at least plus 2, build it with resistances, and that's it. And if a certain shinobi has come out, either it's a rekit or a new kit of a newly shinobi, and it's good in defense, then invest on those shinobi. Focus on that matter if you really want to improve in defense. And lastly, it is really required that your defender must have resistances. It's really important. And the LB must be at least plus 2. Yes, it is required. Because all limit break that has come out since the 5th anniversary, even up to now, are able to strip both invincibility and status effect when they are plus 2. And it is very crucial in defense. Invincibility and status effects are one of the essentials buffs that you need during attacks. But if it's stripped, then it's game over for the enemy or for you if you are the attacker. Okay? So take to mind these 4 things. So now that I have discussed these important matters that you need to take note, then we'll proceed to the Fortress Showcase. So as you can see, I am using Terrain 24, which is not usually used by NXB players, I think. But for me, this is the best terrain set for my own design. And before, I was using Terrain 18. I started from this set after a former guildmate of mine advised me to use this fly-in technique here in Terrain 18. And then later on, I experimented on the different ideas of the other YouTubers. Before, I also used the Terrain 20, which is commonly used by many of you. But unfortunately, it doesn't work on me. As I mentioned, all YouTubers' ideas really doesn't work on me. And yes, it's literally true. So, this is what I have come up. Why did I choose Terrain Set 24? You know, this Terrain set is really traumatic for me. You know why? Because during the time when I'm grinding, having a hard time grinding in attack mission, just to get 200 Shinos weekly, whenever I see Terrain 24, it took more time before you reach the final room. This is a time stalling fortress in my opinion. If Terrain 18, who I am using before, is a fly-in room terrain, I think this terrain is a time stalling terrain. And that is why, from that experience and from the learnings on how players tortured me using their Terrain Set 24 became the foundation of my own fortress design. So I've used this, and then I combined the idea of fly-in rooms here, as you can see there. In the first room that my enemy will be entering is a fly-in room chamber where it is intended to separate the main player to its support. Then after that, I intend to separate the whole team in this 3-chamber whom I call the Triangle of Death. Why triangle? Because as you can see, it forms a triangle. These 3 rooms after the first room. I called it the Triangle of Death. And it is in this room that anything that must have fallen here should die. Yes, I decreed it. That is why in this Triangle of Death, I intend to put defenders who had high attack. Here, I placed Sasuke Final Showdown in a revival mat to block the enemy's passageway if he wished to directly go to the final room. This is to prevent any instance that if, for example, my enemy only desires to do gate crash, then he will just proceed to the left and then just go immediately to the final room. I place the final showdown there to at least make him think of going to other rooms first, because as we all know, we are all having a hard time in defeating Sasuke, the final showdown, during defense. Okay, so, well, up front, this room here, I placed 2 shinobi. I'm currently using Sasuke, Wandering Ninja, because his LB, as I mentioned, you really need +2 LB. And then he had good knockback. Therefore, if there are supports who will fall in this room, he will be really tortured. And with the help of another shinobi, they will finish the job immediately. That is my goal. Anything that must have fallen in this room must die immediately. That is why I put here powerful shinobis. Okay, and then here, if you watch my previous videos, here is my Anbu torture, where Anbutachi, who had both LB at +3, is partnered with this yellow shit guy that you see here, with the Jutsu Recovery Preventing Incense Burner, which, so anything that falls on here will have the difficulty in casting their jutsu because of the very long cooldown. And then, Itachi will do the work. So, therefore, it is my goal that all enemies must be eliminated in this triangle of death first. Or at least, in the minimum, they must kill the supports. Because if the main is the only remaining shinobi of the attacking player, he will be having a hard time to defeat the final 4. And therefore, from this idea, I have come up that my final 4 must be invincible bodies. Because if the triangle of death fail to defeat the main character of the attacking player, or should I say the whole team, for example, if they fail to kill it, the job will be passed on to the final room, and therefore they must be invincible. So how did I ended up with this combo? Of course, invincibility is a underrated buff because usually it is being stripped right now. If you have LB +2 or even LB +1, invincibility is stripped by 3 seconds. So, therefore, it's not good anymore to use it. But, after experimenting the concept that, yes, indeed, invincibility is now stripped. But what if all defenders in final room gives team invincibility? Will that be enough to sustain your final 4 against attacking shinobi? And yes, my theory indeed had worked. Why? As you can see here, my Baryon is only equipped, as I have explained in my previous video, with his 4-star Rasengan and the LB, which both gives team invincibility. Shishui also does that thing. While Naruto, the final showdown, only gives team invincibility in his new LB, while in the old LB, he only gives self-invincibility. Okay, so imagine, if an attacker enter the final room, Gaara will use his Instacast ult, which gives invincibility, and then each use of this shinobi will give team invincibility. Therefore, if the attacking shinobi can strip invincibility, but his enemy can continually renew his invincibility, then it's a good strategy. And that is how my F4 works. Now, before, I don't have the old LB of Naruto, the final showdown. I only bought it recently because of the Ninja Voltage event, the Transcendent I think is the 100 million downloads, I think. But it's something like that. Before, I'm using is for new 4-star. But when my old LB came, I'm still using the 4-star. And shout out to Atrio5665. I am now explained why I am still using it even though I have the old LB before. Well, it's because I found out that Naruto Uzumaki's AI seems to be a bit dumb if you only equip 2 of his jutsu. At that time, I observed after watching replays that Naruto Uzumaki, the Fire Showdown, is only walking. And it frustrates me. Why is he doing that? Why is he not instacasting his both LB? And therefore, I put that when I put the 4-star, even though he loves to cast it, his AI returned to normal and is currently working. But as you can see right now, why did I remove it right now? Because once again, the placement of this final room shinobi is changed. Because as time passes by, I found out that their AI is improved when they are placed to a certain position. For example, this final Valley Naruto, as I have mentioned, it's not working properly before in this layout. And then, I try to jumble them again, their position, and then I found out that this Naruto with 2 LB AI works better if he is in F4 position. So let's just call this Gaara as F1, F2 Baryon, F3 Shishui, and F4 the final showdown. So therefore, when you watch replays, take note also on how they move whenever an shinobi enters your final room. Because sometimes, they're even more improved if you change their positions in final room and not just the jutsus that you are using. As you can see here, by the way, Shishui is not supposed. Why is my Shishui is using his old LB? By the way, my Shishui is not supposed to look like this. No, it's supposed to be like that. Only equipped with his new LB and 4-star. I think I just forgot to remove it because as you all know, I'm using Shishui as my main. And when I use him in AM, I equip his old LB. But during defense, before I leave the game, I usually had the habit of removing the old LB. I think I just forgot to remove it. Anyway, so let's move on. So this is the only jutsu that I am using to Shishui. And I intend that these 4 create a synchronized attacks against the enemy to utilize their abilities and their power. For example, why did I use Baryon's LB first? Why did I place it before the Rasengan? And why did I place Shishui 4-star before the LB? And why did Naruto Final Valley's new LB is first placed before the old? So this is the mechanics. So the moment the enemy enters the final room, it is intended that Naruto the Final Showdown's new LB should be cast. So he will roar. And then because it's LB plus 2, it will strip the enemy's invincibility and status effects. And then Shishui will cast first his 4-star jutsu with a band of Itachi. So the enemy who has entered will be sucked in one place, while Baryon also use his old LB, which will also strip the enemy's invincibility and status effect. And after that, Baryon will use the 4-star Rasengan, which is also a suck-in jutsu, while granting an invincibility, which to continue the suck-in process done by Shishui's follow-up jutsu Itachi. So, are you getting my strategy? And then, of course, Final Valley, Naruto will just continue his job, roaring and then jumping with a tail beast bomb in his mouth. So, that is my own strategy of how to defeat the enemy. And while they all do that, because their jutsus are giving team invincibility, if their invincibility and status effect are stripped, they will continually renew it by giving each other invincibility. By the way, Shishu is LB, while Naruto and Final Valley is using their old LB and the 4-star, which don't have any strip in enemies except for the LB of Naruto, the final showdown. Shishui, on the other hand, will continue the strip of the enemy's buffs with his flame. And adding to this strategy is the knockback ability of Shishui's Flame Tornado. And also Baryon's LB and Naruto's Roar. Because knockback is an important element in my final room. Because it prevents the enemy from casting his jutsu in case he survived the multiple attacks of my defender. Because it prevents him to move. And eventually, as the strip continues to destroy the enemy, he will be killed. So that is how I designed my final 4 shinobi. And then, for the last thing in my fort, after I have discussed the Triangle of Death and my final room, is the overall design of fort. Since as I have mentioned, my terrain is designed for time stalling. The other rooms, which is not part of the Triangle of Death, is intended to time stall the enemy. For example, this room, I come up with this idea of placing Seal Gargoyle and 2 Water Mask 1, which will not fly you to the other room, but rather will just fly you to the same room, if you know that. And therefore, at some point, it delays the enemy by 15 to 20 seconds in this part if they don't have a moving jutsu, or the longest is 30 seconds. Before, I am using magnets only here, and before, I am using this Toad Shop technique here to stall the enemy. And then here, as you can see, Mama Sakura, who is very durable, I place her here intended to also time stall, while placing also this big magnet trap, the third, which we can buy in the shop, to also intended to time stall the enemy. And then here, the water mat, as we all know, is also intended to time stall the enemy. And then I place here Naruto KLM, because I think he is durable enough to stall the enemy. But usually this part of my base is actually doesn't work properly to stall the enemy, because usually they just killed whoever is it in here. Before, Boruto Karma is here, but I've decided to transfer him in other rooms because he is not working properly anymore. At least I think Naruto KLM is much better. But usually it is the shinobi in the outfield are sometimes being jumbled depending on their capacity to defend my base. And then another here, as you can see, I place a magnet and then the Toad Shop technique here, and to further time stall the enemy. And in here, in case the enemy still had his team here for the last time, he will be separated with them, but eventually be reunited as time passes by. But it also intended to stall them because, of course, sometimes the player waits his supports. And sometimes they doesn't wait their support anymore. They will just enter and then they will be killed because they're only alone, and my F4 is currently designed to repel against solo attackers. No? So that is why. And then another thing is that this also, aside from time stall, I am using here a seal gargoyle and a water mask to separate them. Before, I'm using that strategy, but I have noticed that when you place a seal gargoyle here, it triggers the support in case he still have a support to use jutsu and then acquire or renew their buffs. And therefore, when they enter my final room, they are fully buffed, which is problematic because since the LB of my final room is still not yet +3, they still can't further strip so much invincibility and status effect. They are usually defeated. That is why I remove the Seal Gargoyle and just intend this room to look like blank. So therefore, when they enter the final room, they have no buff. And then my final room will just strip them, as you can see in Fortress replays that I've been posted for the past months. So I think I have covered everything that I need to share with you, buddies. So this is my own Fortress design. And I hope you stick to the end of my video. I think my video took long. And thank you for watching my video. And thank you for all your support. Okay? So, kita-kits mga katropa.